What's going on, guys? So I wanted to make this video right quick just to help with minimizing fat gain while we're all in this quarantine lockdown situation. This term, quarantine 15, has been floating around on social media, and obviously it's a play on words with the freshman 15. The freshman 15 generally happens as a result of students experiencing being on their own for the first time from home and having no sort of parental guidance when it comes to what and when they eat. With no longer having a set in stone structure, weight gain can easily happen to any of us, but this can easily be avoided with just a few shifts in diet and exercise. A few major things that might cause weight gain during this quarantine time frame could be due to things like dealing with boredom, lack of motivation, and just overall negative emotions such as fear, anxiety, and depression. And just as a disclaimer, I figured you guys probably already realized this, I'm in no way, shape, or form a psychiatrist or a psychologist, so as far as speaking on negative emotions surrounding the quarantine time frame, I would highly recommend seeking out professional help if you feel as though you fall into this group. But for all intents and purposes of this video, I want to mainly focus on boredom and lack of motivation as they pertain to diet and exercise. I want to first and foremost start off by talking more so about exercise. I feel like exercise is definitely going to be secondary to diet as far as weight gain is concerned. While exercise is important, doing simple things like going on long walks, keeping your NEAT relatively high, and then completing some form of an at-home workout should maintain most of your muscular composition. Your muscles take a decent amount of time to actually atrophy if you're engaging them frequently. So as far as you losing all your gains, you pretty much have to stop working out or put little to no effort into your training. If you haven't seen my last video, be sure to go check that out for more efficient ways on how to work out with minimal to no equipment while at home. But again, let's talk more about boredom. From the literature, it seems as though boredom is often associated with feelings of a lack of purpose. And with that, naturally, we oftentimes want to fill that void by turning to food. In an article published back in 2015 by Moyhan and colleagues, researchers conducted 3 separate studies evaluating boredom and its effects on eating. These studies centered around the idea that when we eat out of boredom, it tends to be a way for us to break out of the monotonous loop of having nothing to strive towards in the moment. In the first study, individuals journaled 2 diary logs, first of how bored they felt each day, and then second, what they ate and when. And as you could have guessed, there was definitely an increase in total calories around the times that the subjects felt a little bit more bored. Carbohydrates tended to be the highest consumed macro, then fats, then protein. Now, just as a quick side note, this doesn't mean that any macro is worse for you than another macro. It just simply shows that snacks higher in carbs and fats seem to be a little bit more readily available to these individuals, and probably for us too. Another interesting thing to note in this first study was though the subjects ate more overall when they were bored, the amounts of foods with fiber in them actually went down compared to the times when they were less bored. Fiber is definitely really great for you. It actually helps with signaling to your body that you're actually full. So basically, these subjects resorted to high calorie, high processed foods, or junk foods for the most part, when bored in this first study. In study 2, a separate group of individuals from study 1 were split into 2 different groups, and they were asked to complete puzzles. These puzzles were actually the exact same, with one group having a slightly more boring puzzle than the other by terms of the way they were described. Group 1's puzzles actually dealt with farm life, while Group 2's puzzles dealt with shapes like triangles, rectangles, squares, and circles. Once the groups completed their puzzles, researchers asked questions directed towards whether or not they had any cravings or were just hungry in general at the end of the study. And as you guessed again, the individuals from the highly boring puzzle group showed to be a little bit more interested in wanting a snack versus the group with the slightly less boring puzzle. So clearly boredom seems to trigger the want to snack, but I think the most interesting part of this article came in study number 3, where individuals separate from the last 2 groups were split into 2 groups and asked to watch a movie extract for the same time frame in both groups, but one deemed a little more boring than the other. Now the groups were also given food choices right away. There was a healthy food option, a slightly more exciting healthy food option, and then a junk food option. The result of this third study continued to show that the groups that underwent the more boring event tended to want to snack more. What was also interesting to note was there was not only an increase in consumption of junk food, but the individuals in the study also had an increase in wanting to eat the slightly more exciting food option. Honestly, I thought it was kind of funny that the options were sweets for the junk food, cherry tomatoes for the exciting food, and then crackers for the health food. I personally don't really find tomatoes all that exciting. I'm just not a fan of them. But yeah, so overall, based upon this article, it's clear that there's a correlation between boredom and food consumption. But I think the light of this study shows that it's not just junk food that people crave when bored. It's enticing and palatable foods, whether they're healthy or not, as long as they're readily available with little to no preparation. It seems to be that people just gravitate towards it. Personally, I don't really view junk food as being bad when balanced with a sufficient amount of macro and micronutrient dense foods for one's daily intake. Even while on a diet, I often allow for junk food options every now and then, as long as they fall within my macros and my activity level stays pretty high. I'm also not too big of a fan of labeling foods as bad or good. I just think they're just foods. Some are dense in macronutrients with little to no micronutrients, while others have a balance of both. Being aware of the effects of junk food, though, I think is highly important. In an article produced by Mass, research has shown that when we consume junk foods, due to the fact that they're typically higher in fat and carbohydrate, they can oftentimes delay our satiety system, allowing us to overeat on calories far more than their slightly less palatable and healthier counterparts. And by healthier foods, again, I just mean foods containing macro and micronutrient density. Junk foods pretty much fuel our reward system. Your reward system is a part of the brain containing many neurons as well as receptors. Things like dopamine, serotonin, opioid, and cannabinoid receptors are all located in this part of the brain. So in a way, eating junk food can become an addiction, seeing that they activate similar parts of the brain that many illegal substances do, but this shouldn't really scare you. In this same article produced by Mass, research has shown that lab rats will even gravitate or even endure tremendous amounts of pain to consume junk foods when presented, rather than gravitating towards more highly addicting drugs that were available. Now again, this doesn't mean that junk foods are necessarily as addicting as certain drugs, but it alludes to the fact that cravings can be very powerful with certain foods. So a few ways to stay more on the straight and narrow while at home, rather than just indulging in tons of processed, high-calorie foods, would be step one, consider purchasing more healthy snacks to avoid solely indulging in junk foods when bored. And I'll elaborate more on this one in just a few. Step two, I would definitely say finding a healthy balance of foods that you find palatable, that contain a lot of micro and macronutrients, seems to be pretty key in keeping a balanced response from your stomach all the way to your brain chemically. Personally, I'm a big fan of using my air fryer. I love just chopping up potatoes and making homemade French fries. So basically, I'll just take a potato, chop it up into little bits. I'll throw some olive oil in with it. All of this is obviously weighed out, and I'll just go ahead, let it bake in the air fryer, and it creates a good balance and good taste. Step three should almost come before step two. Pre-planning or mapping out what you want to eat prior to eating it is a great way to ensure that you don't overconsume more calories. I mean, you pretty much tell yourself what you're going to eat that day, and then you actually consume it. So there's almost no way to overconsume if you're pre-planning. Step four, you want to make sure you're consuming foods that are definitely high in protein and fiber. So this is where I mentioned I would loop back in from step number one. So you want to think things like protein bars, protein shakes, protein powders too, and then foods that are like meats, dairy, they tend to be pretty high in protein as well. The general rule of thumb for protein intake is anywhere from about 0.7 times your body weight in pounds up to about 1 gram per pound of body weight, depending on how lean you are, seems to be most optimal for keeping you not only satiated, but helping to maintain muscle mass in the long run. I would generally say separating it all throughout the day, even though you have those guidelines of what you want to consume total. If you separate it into sizable chunks, maybe let's say your protein intake is around 100 grams of protein a day, I would probably eat it in 20 gram increments if that were my actual goal. And so having 5 20-gram increments of protein a day would be pretty decent as far as spreading it out. But it's not like if you were to just straight up consume all 100 grams at once, your body wouldn't process it. It just more so helps with distributing it a little bit easier for your body to handle a little bit more efficiently. Now, again, it'll still use all the nutrients, it just might not use it as efficiently, and some of it can go more towards waste than you might want. When it comes to fiber, the FDA recommends consuming around 25 grams of fiber a day, and this is typically from consuming foods containing fiber, not just straight up fiber supplementation. This is typically because those types of foods that you consume that are high in fiber come with a lot of micronutrients as well. So you want to think things like whole grains, whole wheats, fruits, and vegetables. I'm a big fan of using oats as a high fiber source. I know a lot of people don't like oats, but snacking on them, not snacking on them, that's all going into macros, so it's kind of your own choice if you don't really like them. But yeah, they're great sources of fiber, and they keep me pretty satiated. And finally, step 5, start filling your time with things that challenge you just a little bit more. I know that's a little self-explanatory, and though these times are tough that we're all in, finding ways to occupy your time with maybe picking up a new hobby or picking up some sort of new craft can definitely help you to stay active during these time frames and keep you less likely to overconsume on food. Well, thank you guys again. Be sure to hit the like button for this video and subscribe to my channel for more science fact content regarding staying fit. I'm really trying to provide you guys with at least 2 videos a week right now. So if you have a topic or a concept that you'd like me to go over, just please leave a comment. Let me know what you want me to talk about. I'll try to chef up another video so that I can spread more info. Thanks for tuning in once again, and I'll see you guys soon.